In a shocking live broadcast, American actor Jonathan Roumie, known worldwide for portraying Jesus in The Chosen, fell to his knees on stage with tears streaming down his face. The room fell into a stunned silence. His sudden collapse ignited a tidal wave of speculation. Was it an overwhelming revelation? A soul-crushing confession? Or something even more spiritual? The lights of the studio glinted off the polished floor as the cameras kept rolling. Millions of eyes were glued to their screens, expecting a simple faith-based interview. Just another chance for Jonathan to speak about hope, prayer, and his journey of portraying the Son of God. But then, without warning, it happened. His lips trembled. His hands gripped the edge of the podium. A single tear traced down his cheek. The studio froze. Then, like a dam breaking, he collapsed forward, covering his face with trembling hands as sobs shook his entire body. The audience was paralyzed. The interviewer, mid-question, was struck speechless. The cameras kept rolling. The world kept watching. Social media erupted. Jonathan Roumie breaks down live on air. Is the pressure of being a modern-day Christ figure too much? But no one knew the truth. No one saw the pain behind those tears. In the days that followed, the world would finally understand. Security rushed to his side, whispering urgent words he could barely hear. His heart was pounding. His body was shaking. One of his closest friends, also his longtime spiritual advisor, leaned close and whispered gently, "Jonathan, are you all right?" He looked up, eyes full of tears. "No," he murmured. "I can't carry this anymore." The advisor's face hardened. He had feared this moment would come, but had prayed it never would. For years, Jonathan had carried the burden of public scrutiny with grace. He had endured every headline, every false accusation, every mocking meme. He had stood with humility in a spotlight that demanded perfection. But this day, it was too much. The forces pressing against him were not just professional or spiritual, they were personal. They came from the very people who once claimed to love him, from the church communities who now called him a blasphemer, from friends turned critics, from within his own family. "They hate me," Jonathan said, choking on the words, "not because I did something wrong, but because I stood for something right." His advisor nodded firmly. "Then we never back down." Jonathan nodded weakly, but the ache didn't leave him. The battle was only beginning. That night, alone in his quiet apartment, he sat by the window, staring at the lights of Los Angeles. His mind raced. His phone vibrated on the nightstand. A name on the screen made his chest tighten. Michael, his older brother. He inhaled deeply before answering. "Jonathan?" There was a long pause, then Michael's voice, hesitant. "What was that today?" Jonathan swallowed. "I couldn't pretend anymore." A heavy sigh followed. "You can't let them see you cry like that. They'll use it against you." That word, weak, cut deeper than 1,000 headlines. But Jonathan's voice was calm, steady. "I'm not weak, Michael. I'm human, and I'm done pretending." There was a long silence, then Michael whispered coldly, "Just be careful." Click! The call ended. Even in his own family, he was alone in this fight. But he wouldn't surrender. Not now, not ever. He opened a drawer beside his bed, hands trembling. Inside lay a worn wooden box. He pulled it out slowly, the edges frayed with time. Inside, letters. Letters no one had ever seen. He picked one up. He knew its words by heart. "You don't belong here. You never should have played him. We'll make sure you suffer for it." The threats had begun the moment The Chosen announced its next season. At first, they were anonymous, then blogs, then religious leaders denouncing him, and eventually, people he once trusted, people who once called him brother. He swallowed hard. A tear slipped down his cheek. They wanted to break him. They wanted him to quit, but they didn't know his strength. He gripped the letter tightly and whispered, "I will not give up." A knock at the door interrupted the silence. "Jonathan, you need to see this," said a voice from the hallway. He walked slowly to the private studio office. The marble floor echoed beneath his bare feet. The television was already on. A well-known news anchor smirked on the screen. Jonathan Roumie, emotionally unstable according to internal sources. Last night's breakdown confirms he may not be handling the pressure of his role. He held his breath. Another panelist added, "He cracked. The pressure of being seen as a spiritual figure. It was too much." They were twisting his pain, turning his truth into a weapon. He felt one of his closest friends behind him, even before he turned. The man's arms were crossed, his jaw clenched. "They want to destroy you," he said in a low voice. "If they can make you look weak, they'll weaken your message." Jonathan clenched his fists. "Then we don't let them." His advisor nodded, eyes burning with determination. "Then we push back. But just as Jonathan was about to respond, his phone vibrated. A text message lit up the screen. As he read it, his knees nearly gave way. "We warned you, walk away now, or we'll destroy everything you love." His hands trembled. This wasn't just anonymous hate anymore. This was personal. He knew exactly who had sent it. A name he hadn't spoken aloud in months. A family member, someone he had once loved, someone he had trusted, someone who had betrayed him for choosing truth over comfort. Without hesitation, Jonathan dialed the number. It rang, once, twice. Finally, a familiar voice answered. "Jonathan?" He took a deep breath. "Why are you doing this?" There was a pause, then a cold, humorless laugh. "You made your choice. You stood with them. Now you'll suffer the consequences." Tears burned his eyes, but he wouldn't let them fall. "Family doesn't do this," he whispered. The voice on the other end hardened. "You stopped being family the moment you chose truth over us." Click, the line went dead. Jonathan exhaled shakily. This wasn't just a battle against the media anymore. It was a battle against his own blood. He turned slowly, his expression wounded but resolved. "They won't stop until I'm broken." His advisor's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure they fail." The news cycle ran on loop. Jonathan Roumie crumbles on live TV. A sign of emotional collapse. He's hiding something. Not fit for the role of a spiritual leader. Analysts debated. Some called it a moment of humanity. Others claimed it was the beginning of a downward spiral. But those who hated him, who hated what he represented, used it as fuel. They twisted his grief into mockery, turned his raw honesty into spectacle. He had endured years of public criticism, but this was different. Sitting in his small home office, head in his hands, Jonathan listened to the relentless news coverage attacking his every move. "Turn it off," said his friend, walking in with a sharp tone. "You don't need to hear that poison." Jonathan shook his head. "They won't stop. No matter what I do, they'll keep coming." His advisor sighed. "They attack you because they're afraid of goodness, afraid of truth." Jonathan slowly raised his head, his eyes fierce with conviction. "Then I will never let them win." The next morning, Jonathan sat at his desk, sorting through a pile of letters. Most were words of encouragement. Others were invitations or ministry requests. But one envelope stood out. It had no name, no return address. His hands shook as he opened it. "You don't belong here. We'll make sure you vanish. You should have stayed silent." A chill crawled down his spine. He'd received hate before, but this felt different. This felt like a warning. He looked around to ensure he was alone, then folded the letter carefully and pressed it to his chest. He had known that standing for truth would make him enemies. But now it was beyond ideology. It was personal. Suddenly, a knock at the door. "Jonathan, you need to see this," said his assistant, her face full of concern. He followed her down the hallway, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. As he entered his study, he froze. Spread across the desk were dozens of letters, each one filled with venom. Threats against him, against his family, against his life. His vision blurred. He was under siege. One of his closest team members stood nearby, expression like steel. "They want to break you," he said. "They want you to surrender." Jonathan swallowed hard. "I won't." But even as he said it, he could feel the fear. This wasn't just insults anymore. This was something darker. And then, something worse. One of the letters had a signature he recognized. It was his brother's. His breath caught. He read the words again and again, unable to believe them. "You're a disgrace to this family. You're on the wrong side of history. Walk away, or you'll regret it." The tears came again, searing. He had always known some in his family disapproved of his convictions, but to see this, inked betrayal from his own blood, was almost unbearable. A trusted friend clenched his fist beside him. "They think they can scare us?" Jonathan wiped his eyes and straightened his shoulders. "Then let's show them they can't." He would not break. No matter what came next, he would stand. That night, in the quiet of his dimly lit room, Jonathan sat holding the letter from his brother. His hands trembled. He had faced strangers, media critics, religious gatekeepers, but this was different. His own blood had turned against him. One of Jonathan's most trusted advisors sat beside him, gently taking the letter from his shaking hands. His presence was steady, unshakable. He read the words and exhaled slowly. "This is what they do," he said. "They divide families. They make people doubt the ones they love most." Jonathan's eyes filled with tears. "But why?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Why does the world hate me for defending what's right? I haven't done anything wrong." His advisor took his hand and squeezed it with conviction. "Because you stand for truth, and the truth terrifies them." Jonathan wiped his face and drew a deep breath. The weight of the past days was crushing. What had happened on live television had only been the beginning. He had exposed his pain to the world. But what no one knew was that he was preparing to fight harder than ever before. He didn't cry because he was weak. He cried because he was ready for battle. The next morning, the headlines were ruthless. Jonathan Roumie in breakdown, cracking under pressure. Faith actors collapse sparks panic. Even his own family rejects him. He scrolled through the articles, jaw clenched, eyes burning with resolve. They had twisted his pain, turned his vulnerability into spectacle, into a weapon. He knew the truth, but he also knew the world had to see it for themselves. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. He hesitated and answered. Hello? A trembling female voice whispered, Jonathan, I just wanted to say, you are not alone. His heart stopped for a second. Who is this? He asked. I'm a mother, a wife, someone who knows what it's like to be hated for standing up for what's right. Tears filled Jonathan's eyes. For a moment, the crushing solitude cracked. He wasn't alone. There were millions out there who believed in him, who believed in truth. He hung up and felt a new strength rise within him. They wanted to break him, but he wouldn't let them win. That night, he made a decision. He wouldn't hide. He stepped up to the podium in the press hall. Journalists murmured. Camera flashes lit up the room. The world was watching. He took a deep breath. I know what they say about me, he began. I know the lies, the jealousy, the attacks, but listen carefully. I will never stop fighting for the truth. A heavy silence fell over the room. They say I'm weak because I cried, he continued. But let me tell you something. It takes more strength to stand firm when the entire world wants to destroy you. He looked directly into the cameras. There are people, wicked people, who will do anything to silence those who speak the truth, even if that means turning families against each other, even if that means destroying reputations. His voice did not tremble. But I tell you today, I will not back down. Reporters froze. Jonathan had spoken, and his battle had just begun. That night, the nation trembled. Some applauded with passion. Others, those who thrived on lies, grew even more aggressive. Security around him was doubled. Anonymous calls and death threats flooded his inboxes and social media. He sat alone in his study. One of his closest team members entered with a grim face. Sir, our intelligence is clear. There are groups planning something bigger. They don't just want to humiliate you, they want to destroy you. Jonathan's breath caught in his chest. He clenched his teeth. Let them try, he said, his voice icy. They will fail. He knew standing for truth painted a target on his back, but now he felt it more than ever. He turned to the window and whispered, I'm not afraid. His advisor placed a hand on his shoulder, nodding with quiet pride. Then we fight. The war for truth had reached its peak, and Jonathan Roumie would not surrender. At midnight, the phone rang again. He hesitated, then picked it up. Hello? A familiar voice, a voice he hadn't heard in years. Jonathan, what have you done? His chest tightened. It was his mother. Mom, he whispered, what are you talking about? You've put us all in danger. Her voice shaking. Do you know what they're saying about you? Do you know what this is causing? She was panicked. You have to stop. You have to walk away from all of this. Jonathan could barely breathe. Mom, I can't. I won't stop. You're tearing this family apart, she cried. They're looking at us like we're the enemy because of you. Tears welled in Jonathan's eyes. Please, Mom, don't let them turn you against me too. Silence. Then, in a broken whisper, she said, You are no longer my son. Click. The call ended. Jonathan stood frozen, phone in hand. His own mother had abandoned him, but he would not abandon the truth. He couldn't. He wouldn't. The next morning, he sat at his desk. Her words still echoed in his chest like a wound, but he had a choice to make. Let it break him or rise. Jonathan took a blank sheet of paper and began to write. You've seen me cry. You've seen me broken, but I will never surrender. There are those who want to destroy me. There are those who want to silence me, but truth will always shine brighter than any lie. I have lost family. I have lost friends, but I have not lost my faith. I stand for you. I stand for a world that still deserves justice. And if I must suffer for that, so be it. The world has seen my tears. Now it will see my strength. To everyone who believes in what is right, don't be afraid. If we don't stand together, they will break us, one by one. With love, Jonathan Roumie. That evening, the letter went viral. The world had read it. Millions felt something awaken inside them. Hope, but his enemies saw it as a threat. Chaos reigned behind the scenes. Security alerts became constant. Phones never stopped ringing. Roumie stood by the window, silent. One of his security chiefs approached. "Sir," he said quickly, "we've been ordered to double the security detail around you." Jonathan had done what he had always feared. He had shown the world his soul, and now the world couldn't look away. "They know you're not afraid," said one of his advisors quietly behind him, "and that terrifies them." That night, Jonathan was scheduled for a live televised debate. He knew every word he said would be twisted by the media, but he refused to hide. He stepped onto the stage. Flashes exploded around him. The crowd fell into absolute silence. He had barely started speaking when a journalist interrupted, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Mr. Roumie, the world saw you break down. Are you really saying that was a display of strength?" Jonathan's heart pounded, but then he smiled. "I cried because I love this world," he said firmly. "I cried because I see what's happening, and I refuse to stay silent. But let there be no doubt, you will not break me." The room froze, and then something unexpected happened. The audience stood and applauded. Jonathan Roumie had spoken, and the world had listened. That night, back in his room, his phone rang again. It was his brother. He almost didn't answer, but he did. "Yes?" The voice on the other end was cold. "You think you won today? You think the people will always be with you? Just wait, Jonathan. They'll turn on you, just like we did." Jonathan closed his eyes, holding back the tears. "You too," he whispered. Then came a sentence that would haunt him forever. "You could have chosen peace, but you chose him." Jonathan's heart ached. He had lost family, friends, so much more. But he had found something greater, purpose. "I chose the truth," he said, "and I'll never regret it." Click. The line went dead. Jonathan wiped away a tear. But it wasn't sadness, it was strength. The final day of the week arrived. The whole world had seen Jonathan Roumie weather the storm, and now they would witness him rise. In a national broadcast, he addressed the people. "They've mocked me, they've attacked me, they've betrayed me, but I will never stop fighting. For truth, for goodness, for every person who dreams of a better world." His voice broke with emotion. "There are those who hate what is good, who try to silence those who rise, but I will not step back." He looked directly into the camera. "They want me to go, but I'm here to stay." Millions cried. In that moment, Jonathan Roumie was no longer just a man. He was a symbol of courage. As he stepped away from the podium, one of his closest advisors leaned in and whispered, "You did it." And Jonathan knew truth had prevailed. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the pain, the strength, and the courage of Jonathan Roumie, click like, leave a comment telling us which part moved you most, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel, because this is just the beginning. We walk together. We never back down. Share this story with the world.